And our first item is a presentation by Randy Eide, the director of the Menomonie Public Works Department. His presentation will describe how Menomonie is meeting the total suspended solids and phosphorus reduction in stormwater as required by the city's municipal separate storm sewer system permit. This is an update to the presentation which he gave at the March 2020 Red Cedar Watershed Conference. Welcome, Randy.
Thanks, Cheryl, and thanks everybody for inviting me. I'm honored to give this presentation again. Dick Lamer is in the audience, I can see, so this is a repeat for him. And Steve, I think this is a repeat for you too.
Yeah.
Yes, and Steve Hansen, both Steves. And so we'll try to update some of the numbers. Hopefully, I think what you're going to hear is it's worth even being repeated because some of this, it's a lot of information, and sometimes you'll see something different or something else will stick. So again, thank you for letting me speak. I think this is important stuff we're doing within the city, and I'll give you the takeaways right away. So this is what you should get out of it. You should get out of it that the city is doing something, but we're not doing this by ourselves. There are a lot of organizations helping clean up the water that's coming from the city streets into Lake Menomonee and Red Cedar River. So that's hopefully the takeaway. If I do my job right, that's what you get. And if I do my job correctly, you'll see some of these organizations that are doing great things, and then maybe how you can help us clean up the water before it gets into the Red Cedar watershed, Lake Menomonee and Red Cedar. So that's it. You could tune off right now if you don't want to hear anything else. I'll save you 15, 20 minutes and you can say you got the pitch. But if you want to listen in, I'm going to try to share some slides. The same, it's kind of it is the same slides, but I want to update it with where we are from March when we gave this presentation at the Red Cedar conference. So I'm going to try to share, and again, I think rules of engagement. If you have a question, I think I can stop and try to answer it if it's right there. If you have one, you just want to hang on to it to the end, we can do that too. Does that sound fine, Cheryl?
Yeah, I think that's great. That'll be the best way to do it. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to share a screen here. So are you seeing the slides? I am going to do this start from the beginning. Now, are you seeing the slides with all are you seeing a slide? Can I ask that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, we're seeing the slides and you have it, it's not full screen.
Is that going to be an issue? Because it's not like
oh no, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying if you wanted it.
It's full screen now?
Yep.
You could take your cursor
Yep.
and pull it to the right, and it gets a larger screen and you can still see
I think it's
some of our smiling faces.
No. Okay. Well, if you can see a screen, I'm going to go with that. As long as you can see one of the slides.
Yep. Yeah, it says
it looks great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So I'm the public works director for the city of Menomonee. I've been doing this for about 16 years, just over 16 years. I spent some time in the Air Force before that. Really didn't get into the stormwater stuff till I came to the city of Menomonee, and it's been a journey in stormwater. I came here in 2004. 2004, the world was just looking at stormwater and how do you permit communities, how do you cities, and so I've kind of grown up with stormwater regulations from the time I started as public works director within the city. What I'd like to talk about here is what we're doing within the city of Menomonee for doing our part to try to reduce the amount of sediment and phosphorus going into the Red Cedar, Lake Manoma and Red Cedar River. So you should see a map up on your screen, kind of looking at the different watersheds in the area. I don't think this is new to the audience, but the Red Cedar Watershed is a large watershed, over 1,800 square miles. And I think you can see my cursor, you can see it up here in green. So there is a lot of runoff and a lot of surface water coming into this Red Cedar River, into this watershed, and that comes down to Menomonee right down here at the bottom of it, eventually all going to the Chippewa River, into the Mississippi, into the Gulf. So what we do here within the city and within our watershed is important, and it's critical for not only our watershed but for the watersheds downstream. So what I'm going to try to do here is talk about some of the things we've done. We'll talk about post-stormwater construction, post-construction stormwater treatment, and then what we're doing to meet the phosphorus goals within the total maximum daily load requirements, and I'll get more into that. Talk a little bit about regional ponds, look at some future things, and then talk about education and again, the point I made in the beginning of this is it's not the city doing this, it is everybody within the community, and a lot of organizations are helping us do this. So that's the key point. So two areas I want to look at: total suspended solids and phosphorus removal, removing TSS and removing P. As a municipality, we have an MS4 permit. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It's a lot of words, but everybody calls it an MS4 permit. We are permitted within the DNR to do certain things with our stormwater and remove total suspended solids. That's pretty common for communities of our size. The DNR has done several waves of permitting. They had some of the larger communities like Eau Claire first, and then they brought it down to cities like Menomonie with over $10,000, and they are putting more permits out there in smaller communities as time goes on. And then I want to talk about phosphorus removal. The Red Cedar Watershed has a TMDL, and that's total maximum daily load related to phosphorus. So there's been a study done, it's approved by the DNR, approved by the EPA, that users in the Red Cedar Watershed have to reduce their phosphorus load by a certain percentage. And because the city has an MS4 permit, the DNR has a way to get to us. So we are permitted already, and they've added to our MS4 permit that you shall comply with the TMDL in your area. And I'll talk about some of the numbers and the percentages that we have to meet as far as a city in reducing the phosphorus load in the Red Cedar Watershed. So let's look at the TSS removal. You're going to see this slide populate, and what you're seeing here is best management practices that have been put in since 2008 across the city of Menomonie. Our city limits are in the light yellow or darker yellow. You can see the dash blue lines. And I'm just going to let this run as I speak. But back in 2008, we put an ordinance together that if you are doing new construction, if you are adding impervious surface, then you need to comply with our stormwater ordinance. You need to put in best management practices to retain the water, control the water, and reduce the total suspended solids from your site. If it's a brand new construction site, that's an 80% reduction in total suspended solids. If it's a reconstruction of an existing building, it's a 40% reduction in TSS. So you can see these blue dots popping up all around this area. And we have, in the modeling that was done several years ago, we reduced the TSS load from the city to the lake by about 36%. And I would submit that if we did the modeling now, it's well over 40% reduction in TSS. So with those suspended solids, you get pollutants, and phosphorus is in there, connected in there. So we are meeting the requirement within our MS4 to reduce TSS. And it's because of all these little blue dots popping up on your screen where we've had a new construction project and a stormwater pond was put in. Or we had a regional stormwater pond put in the past, and now we're taking credit for it on the TSS removal. So we're doing well in the TSS reduction. There's more we can do, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but we're doing well as far as meeting the ordinance, compliance with the MS4, and reducing the total suspended solids going into Lake Manoma. And you can see all these. This is kind of a static picture of the different ponds. And I counted them up. I think we got 130 of those blue dots running all around there. If anybody was, unless somebody counted them while they were populating the screen.
128.
I rounded up, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's the TSS part. But if I can just pivot a little bit, I'd like to talk about the phosphorus removal because it falls in line. These ponds also take out phosphorus, but we have a new goal because we're within the TMDL, the Red Cedar Watershed TMDL. We have a new goal of reducing our phosphorus load into that same watershed. And if I can just go into that, and that is based on sub-watersheds. So if you look at the screen, again, you can see our city limits and kind of the dash line going around here. I-94 running across east and west, Highway 12 heading out to the east, Lake Menomonee right in the middle, in the heart of our city, which is the heart of our city, and the Red Cedar River. A lot of water drains the lake, but within the TMDL, the sub-watersheds that we have to reduce phosphorus load are the ones that are green, are different colors of green. So if you look at that map, those sub-watersheds have been determined that flows into Lake Menomonee and the Red Cedar Watershed. And our requirement by the DNR is to reduce our load by 39.2%. We need to find, we need to capture 483 pounds. So if you're looking at that slide, so our total load is, again, by modeling, we're not going out there sampling every stream or bank. Our total modeled phosphorus load into Lake Menomonee is 1,232 pounds of phosphorus. Our goal, our requirement, it's more than a goal, our requirement is to reduce that by 39.2%. I need to find that purple piece of the pie. I need to find 483 pounds of phosphorus. We're not quite there yet, but we're making strides. And I'd like, if I can walk through the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you what we've done and where we are with the phosphorus load going into Lake Menomonee. So now the pie has changed. I'm just looking at that 83 pounds that I need to capture. And the first thing we've done is that green slice, we've captured 81 pounds. And that's from, if you go back to that earlier slide, all those little blue dots, the green dots that are going populating those best management practices, those ponds we put in, we are getting credit for an 81 pound reduction in phosphorus from what we already have done with the MS4 permit and the construction and the ponds we put in with new construction. So that's good, but we have 402 pounds left to go. The next thing we brought into is conveyance systems. This is kind of new, and it proves a couple points. Where we have long grassy swales, where we have ditches, where we have just a conveyance system that's a grassy swale, the reduction in phosphorus is quite substantial. As that water in these small events just goes across that grassy swale and flows across it, is allowed to flow into or go into the groundwater if it can. That is giving us, affording us 243 pounds of phosphorus we're capturing in those grassy swales. And some of those you can see, this is one running through the tech park. This is by the elementary middle school. This is along Domain Drive, a long grassy swale just south of 3M. Up here is along Cedar Falls Road is a grassy swale we put in, and that when we rebuilt that. So instead of the hard pipes that grab the stormwater and just, directly push it right to the lake, these grassy swales themselves are capturing 243 pounds of phosphorus per day. I still need 159, and that's the next slide. So the other thing we've done is, I'm going to show you pictures in a little bit. We put a regional pond to this blue dot here, the cursor. We put our first stormwater regional pond we put in, and the only one right now, but there's a new one coming, is down by the Dunn County Rec Park. And that takes in over 100 acres of land and older neighborhoods, homes in that area next to the rec park. And that's treating it. We have a 2-bay pond. Again, I'll show pictures in a little bit. That's not only taking the suspended solids, but taking 24 pounds of phosphorus out of that load reduction. So we tracking the numbers, we have 135 left to go. And now we're looking at things we're going to be doing in the future. So I'm going to back up again. We captured 324 plus 24, well, doing math in public, 348 pounds. But I need 135 more. So everything else going forward is looking to the future. And this is an update. When I was talking at the conference in March, I said we're planning on doing a stormwater pond at Wakanda Park. That's going to be our second regional pond. The new news, the better news is we bid that project out. It's been awarded to Stout Construction out of Chautauqua. We just got the final approval from the DNR, and we did get a grant from the DNR. We're very grateful for that grant to support, I think it's about 60% of the funding. And that project should start Monday of next week. At least that's what we're lined up to go with right now, if they can start mobilizing. And that'll be a regional pond adjacent to the beach road. And what it'll be doing is it'll be a series of rain gardens, and it'll be treating that entire neighborhood up by Pine and Oak, the older neighborhood up above Wakanda Park. All of that right now drains right to Lake Menomonee. It is a hard pipe going right to Lake Menomonee. Dick always asks me, how many pipes have you disconnected, Randy? He's asked that several times. We really never can disconnect the pipe. But what I can do is we can put this regional pond in the middle of that pipe, take out a portion of the pipe and treat that water before it goes to the lake and remove some of that phosphorus. This pond here will give us 48 pounds of phosphorus per day removed once we get that constructed. That should be done by fall. Stout Construction is the same firm that did the regional pond by the rec park. So we're excited to get them. And they know what they're doing. They know what we're expecting. I think they're going to do a great job. Still need 87 more pounds. And then looking forward to that. And I'll spend a few minutes here. What we're going to implement in 2021 is a street sweeping program. Now we sweep the streets right now. We sweep the streets, in my opinion, sometimes too often. I mean, there's nothing in the gutter and we're sweeping the streets. We got to work on that sometime. But we need to get into a program where we go into the specific neighborhoods that have connections in those green sub-watersheds, a program where we go into those in the fall when the leaves are there. And when we go in there, like try to get it before a rain event, but a formal program where we have a method to the madness of sweeping those streets. And the credit we'll get is 70 pounds. And a lot of that, most of that, is from the leaves. The trick is, it's the timing of those leaves. The leaves, once they fall in the fall and they land on the road and they're up in the curb gutter, in the gutter system, the first or second rain event, that's when that leaf is leaching the phosphorus. The studies have shown us if you don't get that leaf off right away, it'll leach phosphorus in the first couple small rain events, and then it's done. Then it's a dead leaf. Phosphorus is gone. It's sitting there. So it does me no good to go and get that leaf a week or two after a rain event. I need to get there a little sooner, and that's that formal sweeping program. If I can get that working, we can grab 70 pounds of phosphorus. The other thing I think I gave the pitch at the conference was, wouldn't it be remarkable if residents could buy into this program and say, okay, the leaf's down, it's gonna rain tomorrow, let me go out and get the leaf in front of my house off the street gutter. A whole different mindset, a whole different ownership thing. But I think that would be remarkable if we could bring that concept to some of the neighborhoods in the city, or neighborhoods would buy into that. Something to think about. But if I can do a program, get the street sweeper in there and do it correctly, I could capture 70 pounds of phosphorus. And then we got 17 left. And the next one is a regional pond, the third regional pond. This is shift locations a little bit since my March presentation. But up near I-94, we have a point where a lot of stormwater comes from this area of the city, kind of the north of Wilson, on North Wilson Street. Where else is up there? just that whole neighborhood just north of 94. And there's some homes up there too, some multiplexes up there. That comes down through here, conveys into Lake Menomonee. This spot, if I can move it up just north of 94, we have an area just adjacent to White Pines community there. I think it's on 22nd Avenue. There's a piece of land White Pines has agreed they would work with us in putting a regional pond there. And if we do that, and we've applied for a grant, the grant's request is already in, that's an additional 70 pounds of phosphorus we can capture. And that'll take us well over. We need 17, and 70 would be well over our TMDL goal. So that's what we're doing with the phosphorus reduction and where we're going, what we've done in the past and where we're going. Any questions on that phosphorus stuff? I said we'd wait till the end, but I'm gonna change into a whole different area. Is there anything on the phosphorus anybody has a question on?
Yeah, interesting stuff, Randy. I don't know. I don't expect that you necessarily have answers, but the thought that goes through my mind is, let's say, back when, I guess the bottom line is, what is the condition of the lake, or maybe the Red Cedar River as it's leaving Lake Menomonee? Might that be a fair measuring point? And so my question is, what was that level at, say, back in 2004? And what is the level today? And then I look at that whole map that you had of the Red Cedar Watershed, and then you take all the other watersheds that are coming in, and you see communities. In other words, Rice Lake would be a community that would be kind of a comparable size, and you wonder what all these other communities are doing. Do you have any kind of, is there kind of like a big picture that you could explain a little bit what's going on? But how are we all doing? What is the level of the phosphorus leaving Lake Menomonee to go down the Red Cedar then versus now? There's a lot of questions in there, but that was going through my mind as you were presenting all this.
I'm going to hold on that, Steve. Let me get through the rest of the slides, and then I'll the Zoom. That's a bigger question. I think it's a good one, and I think it's a good discussion point. I think Dick may jump in on that when we talk about it. So I think that's a good question. Let's hold that till the end, and talk about the bigger picture. And I think that may spur some other questions. But I'm just going to move ahead. I'm going to move ahead a little bit and talk about. So again, I'm going to let you watch this slide a little bit. So this is running through on the top right. It's running through those different things I said. Here's what we're going to do. Some of that's in the future. You can see that pie chart changing. I think it's maybe not funny, but we'll talk about the big area. I had help from Cedar Corp to put these slides together. The guys that did it, they intentionally, you can watch the green get less green as that phosphorus reduces on the map. So it's kind of a play on the lake and a little bit, but it's kind of a symbolism of what we're trying to do in reducing the phosphorus. So here is some pictures of the regional pond. This is the one by the rec park. I think photos help a little bit putting in your mind what that looks like. This is from this overhead view of the area before we put the pond in. You can see the rec part here to the right. This is one of the old farm buildings. County's still using it. This is 17th Street running north and south. This is a look at that corner from 17th and 5th Avenue before we did the pond, and here's the pond in place. So these are not little structures. They're pretty significant. And they're 2-bay. This one's a 2-bay pond. The water comes in right here. That's one of the outfalls. There's another one coming in. I think we got a second one over on this side. This is a wet pond. It's lined. The water stays in there. It stays wet. And it stays at a certain level. Once it gets up to this rock area, to that level, the water flows over into the second pond. This one's an infiltration pond. So what happens, the water sits in here for a while. As it raises up, as we get more rain events, then it goes into this bay, and it infiltrates into the ground, and that the ground is working as a filter for us too. If we get a large rain event, or if both of these cells are inundated, the water will fill up over this, well up to the top of the rock, and it'll outfall here. So we're cleaning the water stays here most of the time, but we have an out for it on some of the big rain events. I don't have any good pictures of this one, but this is over at the beach area. This is the nursing home, the Lutheran nursing home, the Purple Door Church, I want to call it. Up north. One of the ball fields by Wakanda Park. This is the beach road. It's a one-way. You go down. The beach is over here, and you come up. We're going to be putting that stormwater pond. There's going to be a wet pond up in this area, and then we're going to have a series of rain gardens using the topography, that slope of the hill, to bring the water back to the lake. And this is what the water's doing right now. It's just coming right out of the whole neighborhood up by Oak and Pine. Just how we built things in the past, you know, how to get the stormwater away from my property as quick as possible, and we brought it right to the lake. So it's going there unfiltered, unclean, just straight in, trash and garbage. But what we'll be putting in is this pond, this regional wet pond, and then a series of rain gardens stepping that water down, and then we'll connect back into the pipe right here, and then it'll go to that outfall. So Dick, I did not actually disconnect it, but I'm cleaning it before it gets there. So again, this is
doing fine, Randy.
What's that, Dick?
I said you're doing fine.
All right. Again, this is kind of an overview of some of the things I talked about. I don't need to go on that, but I'd like to detail, but I'd like to spend some time on the purple one. You know, we talked about the street sweeping plan. We're going to remodel some of our reach sheds. But another element we're doing, requirement within our MS4 permit, is to educate and use outreach to help other people understand what they can do and what we're doing as far as the city goes. And a lot of our effort in the past has been with the younger generation. These are 3K, pre-K from St. Joe's. We've done this for 3 or 4 years now. They bring them over to City Hall, and we go through and talk about stormwater, where it goes, what happens with your dog poop when it's on the ground, what can you do, what can your parents do, and this is not my forte with that age of children. My grandkids are older than that right now, but they listen and they get it, and it's fun. And we've heard stories after the fact where a parent has picked up a child after one of these events and started pointing to some of the inlets and said, "Mom, why is that garbage there? We should go get that, pick up that garbage." Mm-hmm. So we're planting seeds here in this generation that we hope will stick and grow and sprout into greater things that we cannot even imagine. But this is the part we're not doing it alone. This is Liz from the Tanner Menomonee Lake Improvement Association. Many of you know her. That organization, the Lake Improvement Association, has done a tremendous outreach. Here they are talking to elementary school. They have a modeling system, a little hands-on before the COVID-19, but showing, again, at the next grade up at the elementary level, things you can do, or what happens when there's pollution and from a construction site, and where does it go, and what can we do to help change that. And then they're at the middle school. Again, we've had sessions talking about stormwater, trying to educate that level, and let them know that what they do is important and how they do to help with the stormwater treatment. And then another champion besides the Lake Association is Paul Verdon out at the middle school. These are some of his students. We got permission from the children to put these out and publish them, but they're out painting inlets. You know, the little fish you see by there that say this drains to the lake. These students have been doing this religiously for several years. And there's several grades that have run through Paul's classes and have been educated on watersheds and stormwater. And they've been doing sampling of Jarrett Creek. They've got years of background and information on Jarrett Creek, telling us how the salt levels have gone up, how the sediment levels have gone up or gone down, and things that they can do, and measuring the volume and flow. And this is, I think, is one of the critical things. It's not the city doing this. These are These are some of your leaders within the community that have taken this upon themselves. Say, what can I do to contribute? And they're reaching out to the younger generations and classrooms and taking it seriously. And in my opinion, doing a great job. And you see these students also at the Red Cedar Watershed Conference. And that's another avenue that we are not doing. It is a group of, a committee. Dick is part of that, and Dick Lamer and Rod Olson are leading that charge. But for almost 10 years now, we've been taking the Red Cedar Watershed, trying to ask those tough questions Steve just put out there. We'll get to in a little bit, Steve, about, well, what's that look like in the big picture? What can I do? Let me help me understand what's going on, or what are some of the good news stories, or what are some of the things that have failed? That forum is doing a tremendous job in educating and outreach as far as stormwater and water quality within the Red Cedar Watershed. And then volunteers, again, Lake Association here. This is one of our rain gardens done by the Lakeside Park that was installed several years ago, and that's in place still. We can't do it without volunteers. And then we've kind of taken, from the city's perspective, we're starting to turn ourselves a little bit more towards the lake instead of our back to the lake. And some things we're doing is this bridge, the trail system around Lake Menomonee, or 8.3 Lake Menomonee Loop. We want people to recognize the lake. We want them to understand it. We want them to appreciate it. And we think that's getting more people down to the water and then understanding what's going on and asking us those tough questions. How come it's green? Why is it green? What can I do to help? But if we just turn away from it, we're not going to get those tough questions. Another group that's the Menomonee, or the Sadistic Century bike ride, a group of people, lake associations help sponsor this too, is they're sponsoring a family-friendly ride in the fall around the lake, and they trying to educate people about the Lake Menomonee and the watershed at the same time. And then snowmobile races on the water. Environmentally, maybe that's controversial, but again, we're bringing people to the water, and we're taking advantage of the lake. The fishing, ice fishing contests, all these things going on. The music over Menomonee, the libraries brought people down to the watershed again, or to the lakeside. Just letting us know that this lake is part of the city of Menomonee. It is something that's ours, and we need to take ownership of it and see what we can do to improve it and help it. So again, this is a recap of some of the things we've done. But the takeaway is education's important, and the city is not doing this by ourselves. And I would, I love to get the questions on people asking me, what can I do? Versus the ones I get a lot of phone calls about, this is what you need to do as a city. We'll get a lot of that, not just stormwater, but I get a lot of people call me up and tell me what I need to do. But stormwater and what's coming off our properties is something we all own. And it is refreshing when I get somebody asking me, what can I do to help, and where do you need help? And that's part of it. So we're not doing this alone. It's these children, it's the volunteer groups, it's the Lake Association, it's the Red Cedar Conference, it's Stout, it's the middle school, and it's a number of people helping out. And this group, you guys, asking me to speak like this today, to bring up some of these topics and hopefully try to answer some tough questions. And that's what we're going for. So with that, I will stop sharing, because I think that's a better forum so I can see everybody. And then try to take questions. I will start with Steve's. And let me try to recapture it, Steve. Let me try to rephrase what you said. Red Cedar Watershed's a big watershed, 1,800 square miles. What did it look like in 2004? What's happening to it now? Give us the big picture. Is that kind of it, Steve?
Yep. Yep.
Short answer is I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. It is a big watershed. I mean, you mentioned Rice Lake. Rice Lake has an MS4 permit too. They're doing the same things we are, maybe a couple different elements to it, but they have the same compliance requirement we have. They have they have a suspended solids requirement that they have to report back, a TSS removal, and a phosphorus removal. The watershed is about going by memory here, within the TMDL, I think we're about conservatively speaking, 60% agriculture. So there is a lot of work with the TMDL organization and the DNR and the counties, and what can we do to improve the agricultural runoff. The challenge here is that is not a compliance requirement like an MS4 permit. I don't think I'm going to be out of, I'm not speaking too much out of place here, but it is more voluntary as they comply. There's a requirement within the Clean Water Act, unless it's federally funded to do a program, you can't make it compliant in the ag community. That's a simple version of it. But there are great things going on the voluntary side. There's the farmer-led councils. There are a lot of people within the ag community changing things, changing the way they practice their farming to try to reduce that phosphorus load, sediment load, and that is happening too. But the reality is that that water's flowing every day and every second. As the time I've talked here, I couldn't calculate how much water is running down there. But it's been measured about 100,000 pounds of phosphorus every day coming from the Red Cedar River right by I-94 coming into Lake Menomonee. So our number, what was our number we were looking at trying to capture? I got 1,232 pounds a day coming from the city. So we are a small percentage of it. The however is, if we don't do our part, why should anybody else do their part? And we need to meet our goals. But that education element, that outreach element is beyond the city. And I think it starts reducing that 100,000 pounds coming into our lake and going past the city and then causing the algae blooms. So it's not answering your question. It's trying to give a different perspective of it. It is a big picture. There's a lot of people working on it. There's a lot of people doing some great things, but we need to keep the pressure going. We need to keep information flowing, and discussions like this help. And I'd like to have Dick jump in if he can, if he's got anything he wants to add to that, because he's got that broader picture perspective too. You're muted, Dick.
Thanks. As Randy alluded to, the DNR does capture phosphorus levels at the Red Cedar Dam in Menomonie quarterly. And we've got those results going back 20 or 30 years. And there has been, over the last 2 to 3 years, a slight decrease in that trend. And what's really exciting is that's the first downward trend that we've seen in that 20-year picture on phosphorus. I don't have that readily available, but I'll find that chart and make that available to our heat team at the next meeting. So that's one of the things we always track. And in any major project, you've got to have some measurement system to say, are you getting better or not? So that's the positive piece of it.
The not so positive is I think in those same charts, Dick, and I'm here someplace too, I think the nitrogen level's gone up a little bit.
It clearly has. That's significant rise.
Yeah, so that's something we're going to have to look at. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit, Steve. It's a broad question, hard to answer, but does that help?
Yeah, that does help. Thank you. Just as I was watching those kids, you know, seeing those kids in the classroom and things like that, I think what you're doing there is really great. And the general public, a thought that went through my mind, and I'll just throw this out. I envision the walkway around the south end of Lake Menomonee, you know, kind of where it goes around, and the crescent there, you know, the kind of from Burger King and then up to Broadway, that whole area. And I envision people strolling along that area. I envision people walking the bike trail from the depot up to the library. And then I wonder if you had some little, you know, people, sadly, we're in a soundbite society where people won't stand and read something for a long time. But if you had a series of little placards along those trails, you remember the old, what were they?
Burma shave.
Burma shave, yeah. And you'd read these little signs as you went along. Well, if you just had little signs along those various walkways, and people would stand and just read them for 20, 30 seconds, they might get a little bit of an education, and it would say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize leaves were a problem, and et cetera. There'd be little, but that was just a thought. That was just a thought.
Great.
Questions too? You mentioned Rice Lake has the same requirements. Where are they at with their, with their levels? You've gone over very nicely, gone over the levels that's happening in Menomonee. What's happening with Rice Lake, and how can we track that?
That's a good question, Catherine. I don't know. I don't know where they're at with their levels. I would think they're close in the Tss removal. That's not too hard if you're following the ordinances and in compliance. The phosphorus part's a little trickier, and I don't know. I can ask Rice Lake if they can share those numbers, and we can try to get them to you. You can invite them to a presentation like this and say,
who's your counterpart in Rice Lake?
We should what, Dick?
Who's Randy's counterpart in Rice Lake?
There's not a public works director out there, so I'd either go to the administrator or to the street superintendent. So there's not a direct counterpart, but I can reach out to him and say I was asked, and then we'll see where that goes.
Okay, but I want to ask you the question I ask every time. So at a council meeting, I bet this is like 7-8 years ago, you talked about, I think the number was 58 stormwater pipes that went into the lake. What is that number today?
Same number, Dick.
Like you said, you're not taking them out, you're changing the path. Okay, then rephrase the question. How many pipes have you changed out of that 58?
Now that's a tougher question. Now I'm with an attorney here and a lawyer.
I had some experience with that.
I would honestly, it would be one. I would say regional ponds are the only thing that's doing that treatment at that scale, and that's the one down by the rec park. It'll be 2 once we get the Wakanda one in. It'll be 3 when I get the one up by I-94. But to today's standards, to treat that stormwater and remove the sediment as best we can, that you need that regional pond, you need that physical structure. So 1 is the answer, Dick.
Okay.
Brent,
I have a question.
Yep.
Well, actually 2 things. One, there is the DNR work group that's working on TMDL for the Red Cedar Watershed. They do have representatives from Barron County.
Yep.
I have been attending a couple of their gatherings, and they're kind of also working, but within a watershed context, whereas Randy's very much in an urban, I describe more of an urban suburban area. This work group is really trying to work at the entire watershed and trying to build ecological function, but their biggest challenge is agriculture. And that seemed to be pretty clear in the gatherings that I attended, because right now we are living in a voluntary compliance with ag, and I do think many of us know at some point in time we're going to have to shift that. But my other comment is, in our offices, I think, Randy, I mentioned to you this, our offices are in the BMO bank, that
Yep.
big, gorgeous, orange, 3-story building.
Right.
And I really think, my experience in doing this, trying to build community engagement around water protection, especially in Europe, they've done tremendous with businesses, small businesses, nonprofits, chambers, to have everybody collectively shift and educate people around water with demonstration rain gardens right there in the urban settings, not holding ponds out in suburbia, so that that education, as Steve, is beyond an interpretive sign, but they actually can see things. Because that's one thing we are seeing with the younger generation. They will do things in their 20s and 30s, but they have to believe in it. And it has to be something that's like they can shovel into and get ready to go. So I've been thinking maybe there's something we can do in the downtown to try to make us, like, I don't know, really educate folks and the visitors. And then I'm also a big believer in watershed protections. My organization works in 20 counties. We do land protection. We understand that you have to protect certain areas to try to hold water, reduce the volume of drainage that is occurring. I mean, this last water event, I live up on Otter Creek past Wheeler. We got about 7 inches. We had flooding. These are, and this is going to continue. This intense storms are not going to go away. But anyway, I shared a lot, but I'm excited to help. I guess, Randy, is the most important thing I want you to hear is I'm not giving you an idea. I want to roll up our sleeves and try to do something to, build something, a broader connection maybe with the downtown.
Oh, that's a good point. And we've talked before, Lindsay, about that. How can I put that right there in the downtown area? The challenge is that the water starting there, that's kind of the top of the hill. Some of that downtown goes right at the top of the hill, and to treat the water at the top of the hill doesn't make any sense. I need to get near the bottom of the hill where the water is coming down to. So some things we've talked about is like murals, working with them, and Stout was on board a year and a half ago.
Yep.
Grand murals right along that whole watershed, the Crescent Corridor. The art professor, I don't have his name, but I was working with Dustin from downtown, and that just kind of widened down. But things like that we can do, and those are great ideas.
You know, I think that would be a great Eagle Scout project.
Yeah.
No, soon Cheryl is going to cut us off here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
She wants to go to the meeting. But Randy, I'd like to kind of end with your question is, what more can we do? Lindsay's come up with some ideas. Steve has come up with some ideas. Other thoughts that you think we can do?
No, keep the discussion going, keep some ideas going, and communication coming back to my office is fantastic. And if you see something wrong out there, let us know too. We are not perfect. In fact, I was just in a DNR compliance conference last night. We got I won't say any names. We got a contractor that's just not doing it right, and they're talking about citations. So, the eyes and ears of what's going on out there help. Dick has called me on the carpet several times about construction sites and things that are not correct. And if my first reaction is why you calling, that's not intentional. I really want to hear that stuff. So what can you do? It's the positive things, the education, the outreach, but it's also the stuff that doesn't look good. We are open to hearing it, seeing it, and we may not have an answer right away, but we should be able to fix it at some point. So that's what you can do.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Randy. We greatly appreciate it. Wonderful presentation. Hope
Thanks.
we can have you come back again sometime in the future and update us more.
Thanks. Sue, it's good to see you down there too.
Yeah. So did anyone else have anything? Any quick questions? And then otherwise we're going to move on.